thank Dr. Navneet Munot, who is Honorary Director of COATRC Bhopal, for taking this opportunity and inviting me to present my work. And again, Dr. Mona Lisa at MSRIT for coordinating this event and taking care of, the the more, the communication part of this event. And I would also like to thank all the participants who have taken time out of their busy schedule to join this event. Again, it's a 4 to 5. All of you, I know it's the end of the day and the last hour of your working hours, and it's everybody has that kind of intention to just leave for the home. So I would keep my presentation short uh, and crisp, and we can spend some time on the discussion as well. So I will share my screen and let's start with the. So I would be talking about what is about the title of my research today is the key paper whose discussion I would be doing in the next 30 to 40 minutes is titled as The Governmentality of Urban Futures, India Smart City Program and the Way Forward. So what exactly I'm trying to do in this presentation is basically I'm interested in the research question. Uh, how do we understand the mentality of the smart city program? What kind of privileges or what kind of, let's say, impact it is creating on the urban practice? And how can we review this program of its achievements so far, in the sense, what kind of urban realm are we anticipating in the future with when smart development is going to introduce in all our urban governance realm. Uh, the outline of my discussion is structured along 4 or 5 key points. One is, since the program is a flagship program, I would like to talk a little bit about the context, how to understand the genesis of the flagship programs, and where smart city is again an addition to the ongoing the long genealogy of the flagship programs that have been dominating the Indian urban sphere. Second is, we'll discuss a little bit about the smart city as a concept. Then we will try to I will try to introduce a framework of mentality, where we'll try to understand what is the mentality of this program and what kind of urban future it is trying to create. Uh, then we will discuss something about the database governance, which is one of the key ambitions of this program, and how what has been the experience globally of database governance, some reflections and way forward. Uh, uh, Let me go back to the point that after independence, we literally did not have any imagination of how our cities should be planned, or what is the kind of the narrative in the political or the social narrative, that how should we plan our cities.
आ रही है तेरे को आवाज?
Uh, uh, so uh, because there was no imagination that how our cities should be planned, uh, what happened is that we try to solve the immediate urban contingencies through some flagship programs. That is, we there were a series of flagship programs that were introduced at every successive periods that try to solve the immediate urban contingency. For example, the integrated development of small and medium towns, it was more structured in limiting the migration from cities to the, the rural areas to the cities. And then we have the megacity program, GNNURM, and smart cities, and so on. Uh, Now, what we need to understand is that these flagship programs have now more or less institutionally stabilized, and they are funded. Now, every successive cycle, they are trying to outline the contours of how do we see and do in the city. When we have a GNNURM program, we were more thinking in terms of the infrastructure and renewal. When we are talking about the smart cities, it is more about solving, the inefficiencies in the city through data or through technology, or where there would be some recursive loops of, uh, uh, some data points, and then we will accordingly plan our cities. However, most of these measures, these flagship programs are episodic in the sense that we had a different kind of imaginary and a different kind of a gaze in a period of every 10 to 15 years. Uh, However, uh, I mean, there, after 1991, actually, uh, the flagship programs, we can find some kind of a commonality in all the flagship programs that were structured post 1991. Now, what happened in the post 1991 is that the economic reforms that took in the and they liberalized the flow of the economy. Now, after 1991, the states started thinking on cities as the one who possess some kind of a potential lock-in value to attract capital or investments. So we see that post 1991, all the flagship programs were structured in a way so that the urban realm can be structured based on the market-based regulations. Market-based regulations, we mean there was a deregulation of land, how much you can own a land. There was deregulation of land rent controls. There was a FDI in the real estate sector. Uh, so we started making certain provisions where the private capital is less averse to risk, and at the same time, there is no such street politics which should impact the programs. Uh, just for example, the Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission as a program, uh, it it is trying to advocate. I mean, it basically laid a framework of municipal reforms. If you remember, many of you who worked in the GNNURM, there was a set of like 11 reforms that you need to do to get any GNNURM funding. So what exactly in the hindsight this program was trying to do is creating some kind of a market-based municipal reforms where everything can be registered, in broad attributes of capital and value. Uh, Similarly, one of the key reforms in the GNNURM was that property taxation should be done in all the cities. So basically, what all the cities tried to do is mapping. They started mapping for the capital. Uh, I mean, just for some examples, there was a huge, uh, I mean, uh, uh, I mean, land which was actually released for development. What kind of a development is another question, but of course, most around 8,000 acres to 30,000 acres of land in Bombay actually was released from large businesses for urban development. Uh, uh, I mean, so what I'm trying to say is that over the last few couple of years, there has been a fundamental shift in the way our urban governance is I mean is getting structured. First is uh, it is more performing like an enterprise rather than a public service organization, in the sense that most of the city governments are shifting a focus from their, there's a shift from a managerial focus in providing public services to the one, who are more interested in the private capital and creating some kind of an economic enterprise in the cities. Now the mobile capital, after globalization, which is both private as well as the governmental, it starts investing in speculative activities. Uh, and those kind of activities, such as real estate, which are free from risk aversion and they are also secure. What has it has led to is basically some kind of a fragmented and splintered urbanism in Indian cities, which is not responsive to the needs of the urban majority. I mean, we have these kind of still the urban landscape of most of the Indian cities look like what I'm showing on this through in this image. Uh, no, so 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 the purpose of giving the context was basically to raise a question that through the smart city, does the smart city intervening in a way to open up the horizons of, or it is creating, very new developmental pathways? Is it going to create certain conditions where these kind of, urban issues and urban conditions are no longer visible? Uh, uh, so what is the mentality? What is the? So one needs to ask how the structural force of the smart city is going to manage our cities in the coming years. We need to ask this question. Uh, Now, uh, to do any methodological exercise, we or to understand the mentality of the smart city program, uh, rather than creating any opinion-based, comments, uh, we need to understand through a certain methodological outline. And one of the outline through which we can understand is the framework of governmentality. Now, what is that framework? The framework of governmentality is basically helps us to understand how the governance practices relate to a certain mentality that shall structure our conduct. That is, in a way, how we are going to get conducted, and it happens in various ways. It happens basically through, let's say, bylaws. It happens through zoning exercises. Generally, what the governmentality exercise is interested is in creating orderly citizens which create, conform to certain norms and values. Now, since the smart city as a program is going to impact the way the governments are going to practice their, the daily, uh, making and managing the city, we need to understand how it is changing that mentality. And how do we, it's a to and a fro process where the program itself comes it with some kind of a mentality, and the government also has some kind of a mentality. So what is how this is reconciling, these two aspects are reconciling, is something which we need to understand. uh, Now, how do we find it? One way of finding it, we start looking at some kinds of, what are the new intelligible fields the program is going to create. For example, the new terminologies. Some examples I can give you is in terms of like smart citizens, or some kind of terminologies like, let's say, uh, area based development and city service. So there are new intelligible fields are being created, uh, which is going to alter how the governments are trying to start looking at the city. Uh, we also need to understand that through a certain program, we start thinking in terms of also problematizing, in the sense we start thinking of whether, whether we are uh, trying to frame the problem as a supply side intervention, or whether we are trying to create a problem as a demand side intervention. Uh, some examples that we can start looking is in terms of how the program is trying to discipline the population. For example, I gave you an example of bylaws, zoning, apps. They start, making us behave in a certain way, where our conduct to conduct is basically is already pre-decided. Uh, so there are two set of practices through which the governmentality operates. One is called as the macro scale practices, and second is called as the micro scale practices. Macro scale practices, as I explained you, is in terms of like apps, bylaws, or zoning, where you are made to conduct in a certain way, right? Where, for example, when you're using an app, you have a very limited option. You have to choose between the set of options that has been provided to you. So in a way, your conduct, how you are going to conduct, is already conducted. Similarly, once you started using the apps, your micro scale practices are also starting. We can, I can all, some people can also create some micro scale practice where individual disciplining can happen. For example, safety apps, where you start thinking about your mobility route choices. For example, you start omitting from your daily routes those kind of places which are not considered as safe. So through the governmentality perspective, where we start looking at figuring out uh, what kind of practices this program is going to create, which could be both in terms of our collective disciplining, and it can also be in terms of our, let's say, individual disciplining. Um, a little bit about what is smart city as a concept. This concept actually emerged from Global North, which is basically about network urbanism and smart growth concept per se. Since most of the cities in the Global North were planned, uh, and they were already networked, it was easy to implement this kind of a concept, because uh, you know uh, because it was introduced with a concept that the network can become more efficient. Second is the concept also comes with that some kind of a utopianism, in the sense that a futuring which is based on the assumption that smart wares will lead to a very good economic, social, and developmental benefits. Uh, Smart city as a concept is also considered as a political device. That is, it is neutral, and it is you know uh, it can bypass the slow and messy chaotic democratic processes of decisioning. So basically through data decisioning you can take the decisioning decisions in a much more easier way. It is also considered as ideological neutral. That is, it it doesn't. I mean, I'm saying these concepts more in the sense of how the concept has been uh, projected. But I mean, you can always ask certain questions about whether this holds true or not. But it is considered as ideological neutral. That is, it's real time, it's efficient. You know, it can help us to continue the circulatory flow even under the conditions of disruption. Uh, the concept is also accentuates territorial control, because flow, safety, maintenance, and incident control can be managed much easier through through a network. Uh, and again, it is also considered as some kind of a metaphor for clean investment, jobs, and growth. Now, the smart city, this with these kind of ideas, I'm the smart city mission was launched in India in 2015, in July 2015, uh, and it now separates almost I think the 200 cities. Uh, 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 I mean, they are smart city, even more than 100 as of today. How this mission works. Uh, so basically, the smart city, there is a smart city program. Then there are guidelines. Uh, Now, which cities qualify as smart city is based on a competition. One is intrastate competition, which is a stage one, and the stage two, which is the smart city challenge two. Uh, and from this, once the cities are selected, uh, there are two more components that need to be done. One is an area-based development, which could either be retrofitting, it could be either be redevelopment, or it could either be greenfield. And second is a pan city, where you start thinking of a certain smart solution which can be applied to the existing citywide infrastructure. Uh, I will skip right now. I mean, this is how the overall the governance realm. I mean, there are a lot of consultants who work on helping cities to navigate through this competition and finally get selected. Uh, what we are interested is basically is what kind of macro scale structuring this program intends. First is the smart city as an overall program is interested in performing cities rather than non-performing cities. Uh, the scoring patterns incentivize more points with cities which have better service level, institutional systems, and higher share of tax revenues in the local bodies. In the local body functioning. Now, one of the explanation is for this is why this program is interested more in performers rather than in the non-performers is the reason, because the governments are seek surety in their investments in performers rather than non-performers. So in a way this program comes with some kind of a structuring that it is more interested in cities which have better systems and which are already uh, have better service levels. Similarly, in the intercity competition, how a particular city is selected based on the kind of proposal it will send, it is based on how feasible is that proposal. In a sense, this program is interested in a smart but a feasible city. Uh, for example, out of 40 to 100 points are basically linked to a technological solution which can be financed, or it can create some kind of a cycle of user charges. It can create some kind of a cycle of, let's say, some returns. So, and while selecting this proposal, the smart city consortium looks at these kind of, so there's these kind of points. So there's a structuring of looking at the feasibility components uh, in the program. Now, uh, because of these reasons, these are some example where how the smart cities is proposal is structured. They start looking for a certain uh, part of the city which can be developed as area based development, uh, based on the program guidelines, and then they start thinking about you know uh, what kind of an intervention will fetch more points, and actually the kind of intervention which is more feasible uh, will fetch more points, and finally the city can be selected for the smart city grants. Uh, so these are the kind of the projects which are done in the area based development. uh, Similarly, for the pan city solution, people start the overall program is done in a way that I mean the key components are selected automatically, which which create some kind of feasible returns, or which create some kind of cycles of feasible return. Mm, Now, there's another a macro scale structuring that is being done. If you go through the smart city mission guidelines and programs, is it creates some kind of a rationality that the smart solution would be able to create decent quality of life and clean and sustainable environment. In a sense, it is saying that the ecological asymmetries can be mediated through smart technologies. Basically, it is saying that uh, whatever be our socio-ecological asymmetries, there are certain systems through which we can get we can attain urban resilience. Now, how this is problematic is because it is creating some kind of an incentive, or it is creating some kind of uh, uh, the urban actors start thinking about managing their cities in a way that the technology can manage all the socio-ecological predicaments. And the alternate, and also at the same time, when we start privileging this technological paraphernalia, the municipal actors start thinking that there is no other alternate way of managing the commons, basically the ecological commons. Whereas in global south, or mostly in the Indian cities, we find that most of the ecological assets have actually been preserved, where it has been managed in a much more grounded and in egalitarian mode, or in a certain participatory mode, for example through worker cooperatives or local NGOs. So this kind of a rationality which this program is creating, uh, it has some kind of a spiraling effect on how we're going to manage our cities. For example, I can give you another example where we start thinking of, let's say, that by deploying intelligent transportation systems, we can manage congestion. Similarly, by deploying some kind of a sensors, we can manage air pollution in the cities. So these kind of rationalities, which basically accentuate status quo rather than result in some kind of, let's say, an I mean, rather than basically address the problem, it it tries to manage that status quo, right? Or it tries to accentuate that status quo. Uh, Another thing is one needs to understand is when you start thinking about a certain apparatus like an area based program, uh, which is managed through certain ICT technologies. We start structuring city in a way where someone is included and someone is excluded. Somebody becomes visible and somebody will become invisible. uh, there will be certain people who can have these kind of devices or wearable devices, who can connect with the larger system of the smart wears. uh, they can participate in the daily governance, and probably they're more here rather than people who are marginalized from these circuits. uh, what I mean, this also results in that by adopting this kind of a gaze, we start looking at certain urban sites. We start overlooking certain urban sites, and we start paying attention to some urban sites. and this is applicable for both, in which is either connected or whether which is not connected. uh, what it results? It results in some kind of splintered urbanism. That is, certain enclaves which are managed well, and certain enclaves which remain in the periphery and which remains, under invested in terms of, in infrastructure investments. Uh, why I'm saying this is because of the reason that sorry, because of the reason that uh, if you look at the overall landscape of the Indian cities, uh, there are certain places which are, where infrastructures experience in a very different way, and there are certain places where the infrastructures are in a permanent state of disrepair. uh, Again, we find most of our cities, where large urban majority lives in spatially illegal enclaves. I mean, they are not counted. They don't live in any fixed tenure. So they actually, a large urban majority gets excluded from this kind of a program. Uh, Now, I think for architects and for all of us, the other question that emerges is what kind of materiality, in the sense that uh, what kind of a morphology, or you can say that how our cities are going to look like.
Uh,
Uh, I think, or how our cities are going to look like uh, 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 when we start implementing a program which hold this kind of a rationality. Uh, so there was an empirical study done for 99 smart city proposal, and it was figured out that most of the projects they were interested in, uh, uh, kind of, those projects which create some kind of a financial corpus for the city. Whether these are parking facilities, whether this can include real estate development, it can include certain meters to usage of water and host of other projects. Just an example, when we look at the overall budgets which are deployed for, you know, uh, undertaking developmental initiatives under the Smart City Mission program, uh, more than, I think that the top scorer is the transportation, and out of that, mostly 40% are basically focused on multi-level car parkings and building on smart roads. Uh, the reason is again because the program has done a macro scale structuring that, you will get more points on your proposal if you are able to, carve out some feasible projects which can create cycles of return, and transportation projects are the most easiest projects to create that kind of a cycle. Similarly, looking at the second most, uh, sorry uh, dominant project that comes into, our understanding is basically the energy and, energy systems. So we figured out that almost 20 to 25% of the budget is done on, deploying of the smart pairs in the city. So this is the kind of materiality that is getting deployed in our cities through this program. We also looked at, what kind of projects through smart cities are happening in Karnataka, and we figured out a similar trend that mostly, either it is in the transport, the multi-level car parkings, or smart devices through which you can, do much more of surveillance, and through which you can collect a lot of data, uh, uh, or, or create some kind of those cycles of return, and, which helps the municipal actors to count their citizens, or count, or create certain logics of returns and values. uh, Similarly, we did around 6 or 7 cities, and the results were quite similar in that aspect. uh, Now, what it tells is that we're slowly moving towards a data-based governance. Uh, so within the smart city, then citizens are largely, cast as consumers. Although they cannot equally be positioned, they can either be positioned at data points, or they can either be steered or nudged or controlled to consume something. So basically, what is happening in our cities is, in the future, that we are going to conduct ourselves mostly through, smart pairs and smart tools, which makes us more amenable to consumption of certain products, and certain wares. I give you for one example of a smart fridge. Uh, you know, might not be. I mean, just to give that how you start getting disciplined in a way that in a smart fridge, what happens is that the moment you put your fruits or your vegetables in a fridge, it starts scanning, and slowly on your app you will start getting some recommendations for whether to buy it from a big basket or whether to buy from certain other store. So in a way, there is a some kind of a disciplining. The moment you have a smartware, you are more prone to get disciplined in consumption of certain products and technologies. uh, Second is, we are slowly moving where the governments would be run through and by technology. Uh, where where it is the technology, the capacity of technology to navigate is going to govern, is going to decide what is going to be the level of governance. Because how somebody will, whosoever will be conducting those technologies will be limited by the scope of the technology which he is conducting, right? And of course, it is going to create some newer invisibilities. We really don't know what kind of data, what kind of algorithms through which all these systems are going to run. Um, so invisibilities will even grow more as it is as they are now. These are some of the initiatives which are happening. Mm, Now the other important change that is happening is with the database governance is some kind of alliance is getting formed between the municipal actors, corporations, and vendors of these smartwares, who are trying to define what is the kind of new assets that needs to be brought and developed in the cities. And we are seeing that a lot of cities are buying drones, cams, these kind of surveillance systems. uh, some examples, for example, big organizations and vendors like let's say Cisco or IBM, they are all trying to work to create those assets through which you can specific assets, like where the investment is rooted to certain cams and drones or sensor technologies, because what they are doing is they're trying to extract profit through service arrangements with the states and through the data of the citizens, right? So if you see the logic of creating smart roads or a new system, what is happening is that the citizen is a sensor. He is basically the attribute through which the data is captured, and the governments are paying to the corporations to capture that data so that the same can be sold to them. So it's a very vicious cycle. I think one needs to understand that how through database governance is very predatory in its very basic nature, right? uh, uh, so how do we, what are the key reflections which I have discussed in the last 35 minutes about the program, the kind of macro scale structuring that is it is doing to create very specific projects and also consume specific technologies, and it is also changing the governance in a way that very specific assets are created in the cities. Uh, so what are the reflection? One, we are seeing some kind of institutionalization, where the dominant mentality of governance is uh, is to work through technology and digital tools, and they feel that they can improve the quality of life. Now this is problematic because it works at a distance from us, in the sense that in on the dashboard you can only give an input. On the dashboard you cannot deliberate, you cannot conduct a discourse, or on a dashboard you cannot, let's say, ask some new set of questions. uh, so what is happening is that through new technologies, for example, which are getting implemented through this smart city concept, such as city operating systems, centralized control rooms, emergency response systems, what it is doing is that uh, it is creating some technocratic and algorithmic and automated logics through which citizens are transformed into some kind of mere operators and sensors but not as a deliberative person who has some kind of an agency, who has some kind of a capacity to deliberate on the various issues, right? uh, so, so what we will anticipate from this program is basically, as a political, our political agency is going to get, even devolved more, and the governments will start working in a more as a, kind of a management activity where we work on a certain framework or a rhythm which is directly proportional to the technological, what kind of technological investment we are going to do. Um, so these are some of the reflections. Uh, Again, the kind of technocratic utopia that we thought that uh, uh, that smartware will reduce inequality. In fact, the way it is happening through smart city missions, through area-based development programs, and certain solutions which are very splintered in the cities, we are extending these spatial inequalities, and these spatial inequalities are even more increasing because those what we are deploying are governed by, either they are technologically feasible, or they can be managed. So we're producing that kind of a materiality which works around the logic of whether it is a feasible and it can be managed by a certain, whether we have the capacity to manage this. uh, these are some of the examples, of smart city. The pictures you see, that how we are sanitizing our basically our streets through drones and cameras, where the urban life, which is mostly in Indian cities, is work around informal encounters, is slowly getting governed, that you are constantly surveillanced, you're constantly under some kind of a gaze, and at the same time you are given some kind of inputs on your mobile apps to to navigate certain part of the cities and to not navigate other parts of the city. uh, for example, this is actually called as a platform urbanism. uh, the moment you start using apps like for food like Swiggy, or for example certain apps where you want to see which areas in the city are safe. Now these responses are going to govern what you consume, what you encounter in the cities, uh, which is very which basically will create more incentives for things which are already performing, and it will create some kind of marginalization uh, through of those people who do not have the agency to participate in this technological enterprise. uh, Now, how do we is there a way through which uh, we can uh, let's say, can smart cities become a force which can reduce spatial inequalities? Can Is there a way where smart city becomes uh, a body of, let's say, a technology which, which create more participatory systems of governance? uh, so so yes, there is a possibility of it. And how do we do that? That is possible only when we decenter the smart city. What decentering of the smart city is actually saying is that we need to recognize the smart city as not some kind of a privileged, but we start think is as some kind of a, an agent, and we need to apply that structural force in solving those inequalities. For example, uh, just an example, rather than trying to work out, let's say, how we can address inequality in the smart city, we have to start thinking this as a one feature, and also equally start working on other aspects which create inequality, which are basically social, economics, or environmental structures which produce that inequality. So the moment the smart wares or the smart city concept doesn't become some kind of a cog in a whole set of things, then we can introduce it in a way that it create better, more egalitarian and smart and just cities. Another example is which is very much is given, is that congestion is not going to be fixed by intelligent transportation systems. It will become only when we start thinking of other aspects, like how people can shift from car based travel to public transit, cycling, walking. What is that overall production system through which we can create these avenues, where the state start, the city start investing on transit, cycling and walking. So through these, in a decentered way, and framed in a relationship to wider structural conditions, and coupled with ideas of interventions, there is a possibility to create just and equal society where smart technologies will play some role, rather than necessarily being, an overarching and front and center. So if you start thinking in that perspective, where it becomes an enabler actually, where it becomes an and we also start recognizing that a particular urban condition, urban issue is a structural problem, then probably we can think of a smart city which is more egalitarian, which create more socially just cities. uh, so this is how some of the ideas and some of the work that I've been working, that I tried sharing with you, and these are some references if you are interested in working more on understanding what kind of mentalities a smart city is going to create. I think this can help you provide more insightful understanding, right? Thank you, and if you have any Q&As, you can ask.
Um, Thank you, Purushottam. It was it was a very insightful session. Um, Continuing with uh, the session, I will request the participants to share their questions in the chat box so that we can, request our speaker to answer your queries. Do we have any questions? I mean, in the meantime, as we get questions from the participants, the observations from your side, Purushottam, they were very insightful, especially on the matter of techno utopianism. Um, these theoretical backgrounds on the matter, they sort of put things in perspective. The last session that we had, the first speaker, she sort of introduced the topic of smart cities to our viewers. And today, your session takes this understanding a step further, where we're talking about the government's role and in launching this program, and how smart cities are going to be an integral part of city planning in Indian scenario. And matters like macro scale structuring, question of oversight, splintered urbanism, all those matters are things that all architects should also be beginning to look at. So and the last observation that you had mentioned regarding that smart city cannot be the overarching solution to the structural problems in urban context, I think that's a very profound conclusion. And in that light, I'll just have a look if we have questions. I think there is one question: status of application of remote sensing and GIS in urban governance.
I think the entire gist of my lecture was basically to start thinking uh, technology as not as ideologically neutral, right?
Mm,
Because the technology is also mediated by individuals who have their own, uh, uh, first of all, who have their own biases, and also
mm,
at the same time, uh, uh, we have to start thinking certain issues in terms of the overall structural conditions, rather than a solution which can be done through a certain mapping or a certain an intervention. Uh, like for example, I think I gave an example that congestion, it cannot be done just by deploying some intelligent transportation systems, but it can be, you know, managed when at the same time you have the ITS systems, but at the same time there are other, processes which are incentivizing, people not to buy car or shift, or at the same time there are equally investments are happening on creating, happening on alternate modes of transport like buses or suburban railways, suburban systems. So if you start thinking either remote sensing or GIS just as a data tool, and we start, and where we are trying to apply it, and we think that issue as a larger structural issue, I think we can create better categories through remote sensing and GIS, which are more contextual, right? I think that that's how I would frame that, technology has to work, uh, you know uh, in a way with an understanding of a certain, a societal practice which is resulting in a certain outcome which the technology is trying to solve. For example,
I
yeah, I would put it another way. For example, racism, the racism cannot be addressed through, by, but through certain surveillance technologies, but it is because at the same time it has also need to be worked on in a way where everyday racism is also encountered. So I think that the both ways, the things have to go parallel.
The second question Neha has put forth: alternate transportation, upcoming air taxi would change life in smart cities, and any planning based on upcoming new system.
Uh,
I don't really understand the question myself. Um, I'll hand it over to the speaker if you can take it forward.
I mean, see, the my entire presentation was done in a way that we don't start understanding smart cities uh, through the prism that okay, certain technologies will solve issues, because the issue is the replication of a certain practice. The issue exists because there are certain norms which we have, normalized in our daily ways of doing things, right? If air taxi, or I think that's what I have understood about this question, right?
In the meantime, let me take this question a little forward. If we look at the new technologies that are coming up and are deployable in urban context, how do you see that the investment that we are doing in technologies to collect data on existing methods today? How quickly do they need to adapt to new technologies in future? And will that not be a very massive investment to update the technical infrastructure in the city, smart city? Isn't that a question to
See,
be thought of? Or
no, I mean, the entire thesis of my presentation is that probably we are stressing too much on maybe technology and data, whereas the existence of a problem is a structural problem. Uh,
it is. I would counter. I would, sorry,
le-
I
le-
being the
le- le-
speaker am not letting others speak, but my point is there are certain cities which have actually grown at a pace where the government institution has not been able to expand. So if we are offloading a lot of work to technology, is that not a better way to manage a city rather than I understand it is a part of delegating the governance work, collecting data for better decision making. We cannot really undermine governance on the um, front where we are talking about philosophies and everything,
no,
but
no,
we cannot really undermine technology also in coming
yeah,
years
yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. I think that's what I'm trying to say is that uh, that technology has to go. The technological intervention has to be in parallel with the other structural interventions.
right,
Uh,
right.
then the results would be more forthcoming, rather than. I give you an example of, let's say, the pollution, for example. Uh, the most of the big organizations are creating that kind of a rationality, that through sensors, when everybody is confronted with certain sulfur, nitrogen data on the dashboards, probably the behavior will change, right? But that kind of rationality has not, I think, if you look at the evidence, it doesn't hold true, that because our behaviors of consuming certain either a car or burning coal, it has a separate rationale. So if we are not working on a one, if we are overstressing on one you know uh, aspect, which is about creating a certain data, and then we can qualify, but at the same time, the very reasons which are responsible for that outcome, I think that mismatch will occur, and the investments will not produce the desired result. I mean, that's what I hope I answered your question.
Yes, we have another
Sorry.
question, if you don't mind, by
Yeah.
Anushri Nair. Does smart city have the benefit of being a bottom-up approach where more individuals are able to provide a voice to the governing body through not by directly participating in a planning process?
Oh, I mean, I cannot answer this question, but the evidence, the empirical evidence in terms of the papers and the research paper that is emerging every now and then, uh, uh, what it is saying, that it, you know, the governance become more distant with the technology, because then you are given a four options to choose from. It doesn't become very deliberative. Let's say, for example, if whether a riverfront should come up in a city or it should not come up in a city. If this is a question, the answer is a yes no, right? The response the citizens can do is a yes no. But if this deliberation happens in one to one or face to face, probably there could be even more ideas of what could be that kind of a recreational project that suits the city. So basically, it the technological systems basically distance the governance from the citizens.
Yes, yes, I think we all are agreeing to that. Any more questions? I think not anymore. Um, so, thank you for taking the questions and the session once again.